I'm teacher Maritza from the United States.
And I am teacher Chris from the UK.
Hello, so in the spirit of a very important upcoming soccer game.
Or football match if you're from the UK.
Okay, we will be having an internal showdown between the US and the UK where we will talk about what's better, the food, actors, country size. We'll cover all of the important topics of what the differences are between the US and the UK. So in this video, you will get to practice your listening skills, listening to a native English speaker from the United States and a native English speaker from the United Kingdom. And we'll be able to show you how different our countries really are. Okay, so starting off with best cuisine between the US and the UK. For example, hamburgers versus fish and chips. Obviously, my vote is for hamburgers. Chris, I don't know how strongly you feel about fish and chips, but for me, hamburgers are an essential food group item and really classic, I guess, North American food. What are your thoughts?
Unfortunately, I have to agree with you. The UK is not very famous for its cuisine. We're not amazingly famous at how delicious our food is. So I knew that when this question came, I would have to lose this round because, yeah, hamburgers are much better than fish and chips, to be honest.
Okay, so 1 point for the US on the food side. And Chris, I do have a question for you. I was thinking about breakfast food. Is it true you guys eat like beans for breakfast, or is that something you see in the movies?
Oh, no, that's completely true. It's called a full English breakfast or a fry-up, and it's baked beans, bacon, sausages, eggs, toast, tomato, some things called hash browns, which I don't have time to explain what they are because I don't really know, but they're delicious, and obviously a cup of tea as well. What would be a traditional breakfast in the United States? I'm guessing pancakes?
Pretty similar. Pancakes, toast, bacon, sausage, eggs. We also eat hash browns, but beans are off the table for breakfast. So yes, I'm sticking with my guns here that the best cuisine comes from the United States.
I agree. 1-0 to the United States, yes.
All right.
Well, obviously, I'm going to have to say football. Football versus American football, or soccer versus football, if you want to use the American terms. I have to say football. Obviously, it's an international, worldwide sport, whereas American football is only in, really, the United States of America. So I don't know what you think, Maritza, but I have to say football or soccer for this one.
I'm gonna give it to the UK that soccer is probably the bigger sport, especially on an international stage, especially with this big game coming up. I think a lot more people get excited about soccer than a bunch of big guys hitting each other in American football with your hands. So yeah, I agree. Although a classic American football game, especially a college football game, I think everyone should participate in that ritual at one time in their life. But yes, I agree. Soccer is football is probably the better sport of the two.
But I mean, I think this is true. Hopefully, you can help correct me. Some college football games, like American football in the United States, they can have maybe 80,000 people watching these games, college football games. Is that true?
Yeah, definitely. I don't know if that's a thing in the UK, but college sports are super big in the United States, maybe even bigger than some professional sports. So basketball is bigger than national basketball
Wow.
teams, football. I think those are the two main sports that at a college level, they're way more interesting, I guess, because the players don't get paid. It's just kind of you're there for the sport. So yeah, it's a big deal in the US.
That's an incredible statistic. Yeah, that doesn't happen in the UK with university sports. No.
Okay, not a big deal. All right, so we'll give 1 point to the UK and their soccer slash football teams. Okay, most beautiful country between the two, well, I guess between England and the United States, or we could compare the UK, whichever you want to do, Chris. I'm gonna vote though, the more beautiful country or countries, if we're doing comparisons, would probably be the United States for me, just because of the vast diversity. You can find the Grand Canyon, which is, I think, a world famous site in the US. Big forests. Where I'm from in Michigan, you've got huge freshwater lakes that look like oceans. They're so big. Florida is kind of a beach paradise. Big cities. So I'm gonna give my points to the US on this one. I don't know. Do you have anything to kind of compete with the US?
So, I mean, my main competitor would be in Scotland, which would be the Highlands in Scotland. If I were comparing the Highlands in Scotland and the Grand Canyon, I really don't know which one would win. But talking about the countries as a whole, as you mentioned, the lakes in the USA and the waterfalls and beautiful, I think as a whole, the United States would win. But when we talk about those two specific locations, it's very difficult. I think I would still say the Grand Canyon because it is spectacular, but the Highlands are incredibly beautiful, although they may not be as crazy and like spectacular as the Grand Canyon. They are just as beautiful. But I think I would have to give the point to the US. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yes, lots to see in the US, although I can't say I know the Scottish Highlands. So I'll add that to my bucket list of places to see, and then we can do another competition video after.
Make sure to take a coat with you or two with you. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Some chilly weather there, so I'll definitely keep that in mind. So another point to the US of A. Excellent.
Best actors. I mean, if I use two examples, for example, modern examples, Chris Evans from the United States of America or Tom Holland from the United Kingdom, I would have to give the point to the United Kingdom. I'm very sorry. The reason being is because the actors from the United Kingdom are also very, very good at doing American accents that many people from the United States don't realize they are British because their accent is so good. So I think that's why I'm giving the point to UK actors because they are very good at doing the American accent. I don't know, what's your opinion on this?
All right, I will have to agree. Tom Holland, and in case any of our listeners don't recognize that name, maybe they'll recognize the actor that plays Spider-Man. I actually didn't know that he was from the UK until I read something because his American accent was so good. So I'm gonna give the point there. I think Chris Evans or Captain America, he's a great actor, but I think right now the UK has got some really, really big actors, or even in older generations. There was a viral video recently of Sir Anthony Hopkins dancing like a Colombian cumbia, and so he's an international star. He's got some flavor, and I think compared to maybe an older actor like Robert De Niro, for example, in the US, very famous, but kind of like a very, I don't know, I guess they're both kind of like stereotypical.
We could go even further, and the United States has Marlon Brando, Clint Eastwood, who were massive, like international. So if we go back even further, around the same time as Sir Anthony Hopkins, maybe different kind of films, but I think the United States has some fantastic actors as well. So this is a very close one.
Very close one. I'll probably still give it to the UK. I think for new actors, they've got some good talent there. There's another woman, I think she's from the UK. I don't even know how to say her name. Florence Hugh or something like that. I don't know. She's in a lot of movies. She played Black Widow's sister in Marvel Comics. Anyways, I think she's from there and she's a big star. So younger generation, I'll give it to the UK. Maybe older generation, there are some more classic actors for the US, but 1 point UK.
So yeah, 2-2.
2-2. Okay, we're at 2-2. We're tied up here. All right. So next one. Okay, best cinema or best movies, best films. I would say a classic American film would be Forrest Gump. But I think when you're comparing it on an international scale with something as classic as Harry Potter, I've got to say I'm going to give it to the UK again. I think Harry Potter is maybe for our generation, just one of those classic, everyone knows the movies or the books. I think Forrest Gump is maybe for a little older generation or maybe not as international. So my point goes to the UK. Thoughts?
Interesting. So again, if we talk about the specific films, yeah, I think Harry Potter has changed more people's lives than most people have changed people's lives. Harry Potter is an incredible franchise with games and films and everything. But if we talk about cinema as a whole, I mean, in one word, I think the United States of America wins, which is Hollywood. I mean,
Yes.
without Hollywood,
That's a good
is there
point.
cinema really? So I don't know. I think for best cinema, best films in general, I would have to go with the United States of America. Harry Potter, something like Forrest Gump, Harry Potter, definitely. But cinema as a whole, I'm giving my points to the US.
Okay, that's all right. You've convinced me on this one. I think in a more broad perspective, a more general kind of thinking, yeah, I think the US definitely dominates the world in that sense of pushing out movies, huge movies, all of the Marvel movies, Avatar coming out soon, a little plug for Avatar.
Yeah.
So, yes, I think the movie business or in general films, I'll go with the US as well. So
But the
that was
BBC makes some very good movies, but not at the same level and the same type of money as what is made in Hollywood.
yes. I always think like if I watch a BBC film, I'm probably going to be more intelligent. It just sounds it sounds smart.
Yeah.
But yes, definitely I think on scale we'll give it to the US. So that brings us to 3-2. Let's
Yeah.
see if you can catch up now with our next showdown debate.
It's a close one, yeah. Okay, best music. I'm sorry, I don't think there is a debate here. We have the Beatles. We have the Beatles. We have the Who. We have the Rolling Stones. We have the Beatles. We have the Beatles. I know I'm repeating the Beatles, but we have the Beatles. Like, I'm sorry, I don't think with music, I don't think there is an argument here. I think this has to go to the UK. What do you think?
I completely agree. I mean, we've got who's the most classic? I don't know. We're the home of the boy bands, Backstreet Boys, NSYNC, which is kind of garbage music. So I'm gonna go with the UK on this one. That yes, just the fact that you guys have the Beatles, and I think in so many countries they're just so international, and it's not like we know one song from the Beatles. It's like everyone knows multiple songs from the Beatles, perhaps multiple songs from Rolling Stones. Adele is huge.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got our Beyonce as well, but Adele, she's kind of taking over the world as well. So this one I will give to the UK. That in terms of artists and music, the stars that have come out are just amazing.
Yeah, I mean, this depends on the genre of music, because maybe hip hop is better in the United States, but rock is better in the UK. But again, yeah, music as a whole, the Beatles versus Elvis Presley, we have to go with the Beatles, I think.
Yes, I think the Beatles for me versus anyone.
Yeah.
I'll probably choose the Beatles. Coldplay, Chris Martin, he's huge, big
Yeah.
year for Coldplay as well. So although they're kind of, I don't know, are they like a hybrid at this point? Like that they're kind of located in the US, but they're from the UK?
I mean, yeah, they've been around for like 20, more than 20 years now, I think. So, yeah, I know Chris Martin is from the UK and they started from the UK, but you might be right. There might be some new members from the US to make a kind of hybrid UK USA band. Who knows?
All right. So because they have origins in the UK, I'll still give this one to the UK. We're tied up once again. Let's see what next showdown we have. Okay, best city between the UK or US, UK, England. I always get confused with those. But I would have to say, and I have to say that I've only been to London one time and I was working, so it's not like I saw a whole lot. But this is a really tough one, actually. I feel like there's such different cities when you're comparing, for example, New York City and London. They're both iconic cities. New York maybe is a little more modern looking. I think the UK or in London, you've got kind of more historical sightings. You've got the Palace of Buckingham or Buckingham Palace, the London Eye. I feel like there are lots of kind of historical places in London, but I'm gonna go with New York on this one, or the US, New York, just because I know it a little more, or I've been there a little more than I have London. So I don't know. What are your thoughts?
So I've never been to New York. I would love to go. It's number one on my bucket list is to go and visit New York. I think you really hit the nail on the head. Like you were completely right when you said about London being very historical, but New York is maybe more modern. So I think this is a very difficult one. I love London, but I think I prefer a more modern metropolitan city. So I think, even though I haven't visited, I think I would go for New York. Even I love London, I've never visited New York, but I have a feeling that the more modern aspect of it appeals to me more. And when we talk about cities in general in the UK and the USA, I definitely think, yeah, because you guys are bigger, you have more. We have maybe London, Edinburgh, Oxford, but other than those three cities, there's not many places that tourists want to go to. In America, in the United States, New York, Chicago, Boston, Los Angeles, Miami, there's so many big famous cities compared
Yes.
to the UK's very few famous cities. So I think, unfortunately, I'm going to have to go with the USA on this one.
All right. Yes, I agree. I kind of, yeah, thinking about kind of the comparison of major cities. Uh, like you mentioned, we've got so many different major cities in the US, and they're all kind of different. Whether that's because the climate's different, the weather's different, they're different places, different scenery. Yes, I think cities, I'm going to give it to the US. If we're breaking it down with by cities, I'll take this point then. So I don't know what that brings us up to. Where are we tied again?
I think that's 4-3 now.
Okay, all right. So
On to
I
the
guess
last question.
move on to our last showdown to settle the score. Okay, I feel like we get this question a lot in our live classes. Like, what's the better? What is the better English? I guess to learn, is it American English or British English? Which is easier? Which one should I know? So I think in a showdown, of course, I have my own thoughts. I think that British English honestly sounds better to the ear than American English. Sounds a little more polite. But I do think that it's really important to learn both of the accents, both types of English. Not only to train your ear to listen to other accents, but to understand different types of slang and understand different contexts of conversation and language. So I'm going to be neutral on this one. I'm not going to say my American English is better than your British English, although in my opinion, British English is above American English. But what are your thoughts here, Chris?
So it's interesting that in your opinion, the British English is better because we have to remember that most people hear the British English from the BBC, which is not the same British English that everybody uses. Sometimes the British English, some accents can be very difficult to understand and maybe even sometimes not sound very nice either. But the BBC British English, yes, I think, in my personal opinion, is maybe just that bit more formal, bit more educational. But I completely agree with you that from the students' benefits, obviously, as English teachers, we think about the students, and the question we've received lots of times is this. I completely agree that for a student, English, British, or American, it's beneficial to learn and listen and use both different accents and dialects. I also think you'll agree there's not that many differences really in terms of vocabulary, maybe 50 words, and we
Yeah.
know most of the words from each other's dialect.
Yeah, totally agree. And I actually, when I was just traveling now, it's so interesting that I mean, I think a lot of people forget that within a British accent or an American accent, there are so many kind of sub accents. So we were actually at a hotel and we met a girl from I think she's from Southampton, or does that sound right? Is that a place there
I
in
went to university in Southampton.
Okay, accent was totally different than yours. It was my husband didn't understand anything she said, and I was like, "Oh, she speaks quite differently than Chris." But you kind of think like, "Oh, you all speak like the BBC there." So, and I think the same applies to the U.S. That there are lots of different accents depending on where you are as well. So, it's kind of an umbrella effect. You've got your American versus British and different accents, and
Yeah.
I think any sort of exposure you can have to these different sounds and accents is going to really benefit you in the long run. So I thought that was super interesting as well. So I guess on this one, the point goes, we'll give a point to each one of us. We
Yeah.
each get a point.
I think we can say from the students' benefit, this is a draw, but maybe from our own personal opinions in the BBC, the UK can win just so that the competition finishes as a draw. But
Yes,
in
yes.
reality, no, this round was a draw, so I think the US has won overall.
All right. Excellent. Well, Chris, I think this was a good showdown. I think we both have a lot of different opinions about kind of what's maybe better. But I think in the long run, I think anytime you have the opportunity to experience different food, listen to different actors, different music, I think it's a fun competition to have. And I know lots of students have asked us about these differences, and hopefully now you guys have learned a little bit more about these differences, and that well, this was a friendly competition, and I do have my thoughts that, for example, the U.S. has better food. I think hopefully these types of conversations inspire you guys to visit each one of these countries in order to learn English. I think it's super important to understand the cultures of each, as I think culture is a huge part, or language is a huge part of culture as well. So, Chris, I don't know if you have any parting words from our competition.
No, I think there was a very fair competition. I think the points were given correctly, so I can't complain. Yeah, just like you said, I just really would encourage anybody to try any new culture. And again, as well, I hope they also enjoyed this video. Listening to the two different accents, as we mentioned, is a very good learning tool. So yeah, I just hope they enjoyed this video and they can get the courage to go and experience new cultures for themselves.
For sure. And remember, guys, if you want to learn more English with native English speakers like Chris or myself, remember we have our Open English platform and more information about our current promotions we have in the link below in this YouTube video. So thank you so much for joining us for today's video. Chris, I'll give you a virtual handshake. It was a good competition, and yeah, we will see you guys in our live classes to talk more about English and culture differences. And hopefully we will be back together soon in one of our live classes. So, Chris, see you soon.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.